A lot of parents are not prepared to be the root of their child's insecurities. Go. I have a lot of conversations with parents. They see the way that I navigate with people younger than me. One topic that always comes up is insecurities at one stage or another. For most of us, it's middle school, freshman year, high school. So for some, it lasts longer depending on your social engagement. So in being asked, how do I help my child with their personal insecurities? I don't rush to an answer because that's not something you can rush into. When you start talking about insecurities, you're talking about brick by brick, something that was built up to combat what was happening externally, which made its way internally and began to do damage that way. So you're talking about an internal defense mechanism against an external attack, which then turned to an internal struggle. So the first thing I tell them is to identify the root. And as parents, you have to be prepared to be the root. I have to be prepared to be the root. I have to know, and I wake up knowing on certain days that there are things that my daughter feels because of her direct contact with an insecurity of mine. And since the day I identified it, I began to approach it in various ways to chip away at the damage that I had done. As parents, we have to be prepared to be that. A lot of parents are not prepared to be the root of their child's insecurities. But about 6 times out of 10, they are. And that was me being nice. It's almost hard for us not to, because somebody has to hear it. It has to go somewhere. It doesn't need to go to our children because they love us. Our children love us. They adopt our pains. It doesn't benefit them to hear about the stuff we're hung up on. Why? So once you identify the root, whatever that may be, then you begin to discuss the damage that the root has done. What has the root done to you? And speaking from a personal experience, middle school was horrible for me. I had to learn how to talk myself out of a lot of violent situations simply because I was smaller than a lot of people. Then I had this growth spurt between 8th grade and 9th grade, and then I stopped getting picked on. I don't know, it was weird. Because I had my experiences in middle school, there are other things that were a negative result of that. I said I had that growth spurt. But what also happened is between 8th grade and 9th grade, I made the decision to become predator and not prey. I began to use violence as a means of squashing everything that ever came my way because I wasn't willing to feel those feelings from middle school ever again. But as time progressed, I learned how to use other things because violence is exhausting. That's at the basis of level as far as conflict resolution goes. Your child may not be violent. They might be a cutter. They might be a binge eater. They might be antisocial. They might be depressed. There's so many different forms of damage that the root has done and can do that this is really surgical. And that's another thing I notice about parents. This isn't a knock. If it wasn't for the fact that I have the wheelhouse that I have, I probably would fall on your side of things as far as dealing with the circumstance of communicating with teenagers. If I was a behind the desk person, I might be different. I don't know. I can only use what I've learned and share it. And in saying that, approaching your child's insecurities is surgical. It's an act of patience. It's 1 step forward and 2 steps back, oftentimes. But by and by, you got to get there for your child's sake. You or some other entity who has a level of intelligence about it and has skin in the game as far as loving your child, if you can get that help that way, that's great. But oftentimes it's us. If it's not us, it's their peers, and that's never good. That is never good. Never leave insecurities in the hands of those who have insecurities that they also don't know how to manage. Always get ahead of it. Do not let your child fall into the arms of her well-meaning peers, because her peers mean well. My daughter's friends love her for whatever that means to them. It doesn't mean it's the best form of love. It doesn't mean it's the most applicable form of love. It means it's the love that fits right now. And we have to accept that. But we also have to understand that that's not going to help our child's insecurity circumstance. We have to be part of that process. Because guess what? We were probably part of the building of it. Now, the third component is because I liken insecurity so much to addiction that you kind of have to do addiction replacement. First of all, here's how it's addiction. We know insecurities are bad for us, don't we? We know the feelings that we feel are fake. We know that that's not the reality of the situation, but the insecurities / whatever the drug it is that we're addicted to is telling us that those feelings are real. For all intents and purposes, it's hard for us to ignore the call of insecurity when we want to believe it so bad because it's been a part of our reality. I don't have to explain how that correlates to addiction, right? And lastly, it takes more than you thought you had to overcome it. To overcome personal insecurity, it takes way more than you believe you have because you're already insecure. So thinking about it along those lines will make it a less arduous journey, but a journey that we hope comes to an end in the means of us not being controlled by our insecurities anymore. For more content like this, hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can stay updated on what I'm doing. The Real Wayne Steven. Yes, sir.